All right, what's going on, everybody? Back at you with another episode of Quarantine Football. Like always, I'm your co-host Ryan with you guys today, sitting down talking NFL football, and we got the whole gang with us today. We got Nate, we got Dorian, we got me, we got the whole trio. Everyone, how you guys doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well today. Excited to be here with both of you guys to talk some football. Of course, this is a kind of classic quarantine football kind of episode. Yeah, I'm just really excited.
Hey, I'm excited too. Pretty rare for us three to be on an episode. So, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, I want to let the listeners and viewers know now that we have a YouTube channel. Most of the time now for NFL episodes, it's going to be us three. More opinions, more content, and better football talk, all that good stuff. So today, our topic of the day is most underrated and overrated players of all time. And now, while making this list, I don't know if you guys can say the same, but my underrated guys were a lot of guys still in the league, but a lot of my overrated guys were kind of like guys that aren't in the league anymore. I think I got one guy on my list who's still in the league that I think when I say his name, you guys will definitely agree with. But I don't know. I don't know if you guys had that pattern in your list.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just that's a bias that we've addressed in the past. Uh, like we've talked about before, we've done like list type of episodes that obviously we're gonna have a bias towards people who we grew up watching, and people who even in our era, it's like a more inflated stats kind of era. And because we come from a background of like kind of like statistical kind of stuff when we're looking at NFL history, we mostly look through a statistical lens. Often those people from recently are going to look better, and that's where we're going to put them on our list because there's really not much that we could do other than that at this point. So if we do have a bias towards those kind of players, that's kind of why.
Yeah, I mean, it's that you said it best, Dorian. I don't know if your list is the same as ours.
Yeah, I mean, mine was pretty similar. For my underrated list, I do have a couple guys. I don't think it's going to surprise you at all who they are, but, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, this can be really, really different. Nate and I were discussing before recording. We got one guy on our overrated list that, I'll just hop right into it right off the bat. We got Bo Jackson on our overrated list. Dorian, I'm not sure if you have him on your list also.
I do have him on my list.
Yeah, I mean, Nate, you being a Raiders fan, man, why don't you explain why pretty much all three of us have Bo Jackson on that list?
Yeah, listen, like it hurts me to say this as a Raiders fan. My dad grew up watching Bo Jackson, loved watching him play. And I know that he's a highlight kind of player. Like he had some crazy plays, some iconic moments, some really cool stories from some of his teammates about what he was able to do on the field. But the reality is that the guys that he's compared to at running back, they have a lot more production than he does. He was only in the NFL for about 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. Never put up 1,000 yards rushing in a year. He had good yards per carry numbers, but like nothing that would really propel him into like greatest running backs of all time category. So if you're talking about him in terms of an athlete, obviously he's way up there. But just for football purposes and as a running back, I don't think he has any place on any of those like top 10, top 15, top 20 type of
Oh
lists.
no, not in. If someone had Bo Jackson in their top 15 running backs of all time, I would call them an idiot. Put it that way. He should not be in top 15 running backs of all time. For top 10 athletes in general, though, he's definitely top 10 for that. Like athletic wise, I just remember that one play in the MLB when he ran up the wall to rob that home run. That was just crazy. Watching that as a middle schooler, I didn't even know about that yet, and then first seeing that, it was absolutely insane. But Bo Jackson, just like in terms of statistics, like I agree with you completely. He shouldn't. He's very overrated for what people think. He's got all those crazy Madden cards that everyone's always trying to pull in the packs. But outside of that, really, just he just wasn't very good in the NFL. Like you said it best, Dorian. You got anything? You got anything you want to say about Bo Jackson, man?
No, I was just gonna say, same thing like you said. We see the Madden cards, and he's so hyped up in Madden. They have the quarterback card that they throw out every couple of years. Bo Jackson, and I mean, for me, he's just like you guys said, he's a top 10 athlete of all time, incredibly fast, but just not in the top 10, top 15 running backs of all time.
Yeah, no, I mean maybe top 50. Statistically wise, I'd put him in the top 50. But it's who would you guys think is like a comparable I guess player with Bo Jackson that was in the NFL? I'm trying to think of someone.
It reminds me of it's like Jamaal Charles. I mean, I love Jamaal Charles, But Jamaal Charles was not in the NFL for very long. I mean, he was, but he wasn't effective very long at all.
Yeah.
He ended his career ended pretty early because of injuries, but he was amazing when he was in the NFL. He had a lot of highlight plays. You would constantly see him on the weekly highlights of all the NFL's posts and stuff like that. I mean, you look up his highlights on YouTube; they're insane. His speed was ridiculous. He was super elusive. But at the end of the day, he doesn't make those all-time lists because he wasn't in the NFL very long. He wasn't able to avoid injury very well, and it's unfortunate. But yeah, I'd say that's a good comparison there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not this is kind of premature, but someone I compare him to right now in the NFL would be not athlete wise, but NFL career wise would be
Todd Gurley.
Todd Gurley.
Yep.
Yeah, Todd Gurley had that one insane year, and then injuries have always, I feel set him back. He's has incredible potential. He showed it on the Rams, but I don't know how long Todd Gurley's going to be in the league. And, if I had to compare him to anyone in the league right now, it'd be Todd Gurley.
Yeah, and I would like to bring it back to the kind of Bo Jackson era kind of thing. I think that someone that he actually played next to and someone that he played with is definitely deserving a spot on the underrated list here. And that would be
you're going to say Marques Allen.
It's Marques Allen. It's Marques Allen.
I have him on my overrated list.
That's ridiculous. That's absurd. Marques Allen is not overrated.
Hold on. I'll back up the stats. You continue.
Okay. He had over 2,000 scrimmage yards almost in back-to-back seasons. He had 1,900 scrimmage yards in one year and then over 2,000 in the next year. 2-time first-team All-Pro, 6-time Pro Bowler. He was in the NFL for over 15 years. He had a ridiculous Super Bowl. I think he won 2 Super Bowls, honestly. And he had a ridiculous run in the Super Bowl that basically won the Raiders the game in the Super Bowl, where I don't know if you guys know the play, where he caught a pitch and then he turned back the other way, ran around the line of scrimmage, and then ran all the way for the touchdown. I mean, in terms of career longevity, effectiveness, he wasn't even the number one guy on some of those teams, but he still put up ridiculous numbers in some of those seasons. And yeah, I would say that he's underrated and underappreciated in NFL history.
I don't know, man. I gotta say nah, just because I'm looking at the stats right now. I was looking at some lists as well, trying to format my list as well, get some outside opinions. And this one site, really eye-popping stat, he only averaged 55 rushing yards per game. And I know you said, he wasn't the starting running back every year, but in his final 12 years, he only had 900 rushing yards. He never surpassed 900 rushing yards. So it's I don't know why people, if you have him as a top 10 running back of all time, I just can't agree because he doesn't have the, yes, he has the longevity, but he just never had, I feel he had eye-popping plays, but never he had 1 or 2 eye-popping seasons. He only led the league once in rushing yards, but he just never had consistent years. He didn't go 5 years straight with over 1K yards. That he just never really set himself apart, I feel from other elite running backs. And there are other guys with better stats than him that I'd put over Marques Allen. So that's just why I have him as an overrated player. Dorian, I want to see which side you going with.
I mean, think I'm gonna have to side with Nate on this one. Marques Allen. I mean, like he said, he wasn't a starter and was still able to put up in over 12,000 yards and 123 touchdowns. That's insane. And you're not a starting running back.
Yeah, for some perspective, keep going after I say this, Dorian. But he was 14th in career rushing yards and 3rd in career rushing touchdowns. How could that guy not be in your top 15, especially with not having the same kind of carry load and role that some of the other guys on that list have?
And not to mention, he had about 115 starts total out of a total 145 games.
That is true. I won't deny that. I'm looking more at yes, he had a long career. Yes, he's up there in those lists, but that doesn't mean he's not overrated, in my opinion. There's other stats that I could bring up, like I mentioned before, that can back up my reasoning for why he's overrated. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with it, but that's just how I see it. I don't think he's now that I was thinking about it, I would put him in if there's a section, the middle section, he's not overrated or underrated. He's rated. If that's even a thing. he's just there. Like, he's not really, like, in a special category. But, going off of more running backs, one guy that I think you guys will also agree with here that I put in my very extremely, extremely overrated list is Peyton Hillis, the Cleveland running backs. He is so overrated. He had one good year where Cleveland fans loved him and just voted him on the Madden cover, and then he just fell off the face of the earth.
Wait, does anyone actually think that Peyton Hillis is good though? Like, I think people have to
I don't
think
know,
that. I
but
think
he's
people
still
people have to
overrated.
think people have to think that you're good to be overrated. Like, people have to rate you highly.
I
Like,
mean,
I don't think that people. I don't think there's anyone that's like, yo, Peyton Hillis is the truth, man. Peyton Hillis,
I
top
mean,
20 running back of all time.
Cleveland that one season, that you could get them to say that.
Yeah,
yeah,
I know
like
you can get them
Cleveland
to say
fans will
that
say
season.
that. Yeah,
That
Browns
season,
fans will be like,
in
like Peyton
retrospect.
Hillis, awesome. He was on Madden cover. He was a beast. But he had one good season. He was just like a complete bust. Like, it's just like he's like not even in the category of overrated. He's like all the way up to the like far like that side of my room. Like, he's like chilling over there by himself, sitting in like a circle of his imaginary friends. Like, oh, I had that one good season. I'm extremely overrated, but everyone still loves me.
But like, here's the thing that I've got to say, right? He wasn't a high draft pick. He wasn't known going into the season, and he kind of just faded out going out of the season. So you can't say he's a bust because they didn't really invest any
Oh
assets in
yeah,
him.
no,
And you also like you couldn't really make the argument that he's overrated because I don't know. Besides maybe some like deranged Browns fans who are a complete minority in NFL fandom, like is there anyone that actually thinks that he's that good? I mean, it's kind of like that season. It reminds me a little bit of another Browns guy, Gary Barnidge. Do you guys remember Gary
yeah,
Barnidge?
Oh
the
yeah,
butt catch, the butt
He had a
catch.
dirty season. He had a butt catch in that season. Then he kind of fell off the face of the earth after that season. Uh, but like, I don't think that you would say that he's overrated because no one really thinks he's. I don't know.
I
No one
mean,
thinks
to
he's
be
that
fair,
good.
a lot of Browns players have like one really good season, then fall off the face of the earth.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true.
I was gonna say he's a Cleveland player. I mean, there's not much you can say, especially from that point of Cleveland. Now it might be something different because all these guys are starting to come up. Management is starting to do a little bit better, but he was a Cleveland player at the end of the day. I
Yeah,
think.
I
Yeah,
mean, all Cleveland players. Sorry, Browns players, you guys are listening to this, but not current ones, but past ones. Like, we're sorry that you had to spend your career with the Browns outside of Joe Thomas because he had an incredible career. But majority of you guys kind of suffered, which really stinks. Who else do you guys like have on your list? I need to hear you guys have on the overrated list.
My overrated list. All right. I mean, Ryan, you're gonna hate me for this, but Eli Manning is on there.
You know what? I could understand why you would like put him on there.
Yeah, I mean, yes, he has the 2 Super Bowls, but those are also due to 2 of the luckiest catches, and he's admitted it. He went on
Mhm.
Undisputed and said, especially the helmet catch to David Tyree, he admitted that it was probably the luckiest throw of his career.
I
Not to
mean,
mention,
yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, the man's thrown a ton of picks. I'm pretty sure they've had more losing seasons than winning seasons when he played. And he wasn't like, it's really just because of the longevity of his career, like with Marcus Allen. Eli Manning was never like up there in like the elite like quarterback range. Like, I would never, maybe outside of like one or two seasons, I wouldn't have put Eli Manning in my top 10 current quarterbacks. I don't think he was ever really there. It was mostly his supporting cast that really helped him. So, I mean, I'm going to agree with you on this. I think, overrated is definitely a fair assessment for him because, I mean, I had Marcus Allen on there, and, like, it's pretty much like the same exact concept, I feel like.
yeah. I don't necessarily disagree with you guys, but I do want to push back on one sense is that like as a quarterback, one of your main jobs for the team is really just to show up and be there for the team constantly because any starting like yeah, Eli Manning wasn't really top 10 in any like specific points of his career, but he was much better than a replacement level quarterback. And any quarterback that gets injured, you have to put a replacement quarterback out there. Eli Manning started a ridiculous amount of games in a row. Like the Giants could always depend on Eli Manning being out there. They always knew they had at least an average quarterback that could play on the field every single game that they had. And there's something to be said for that, like throughout the regular season and throughout the playoffs, because they knew they could build around him. They knew that they already had a reliable piece at the most important position. So I wouldn't necessarily disagree, like in terms of quarterback talent. Like no, he's not amazing in terms of quarterback talent, but in terms of like just being there, in terms of actually like doing his job, he's really one of the best. I mean, I'd hesitate to say that he's overrated. I would say that he's about rated in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, in no way am I calling Eli Manning a scrub, despite everything I might have said in fits of anger being a Cowboys fan. But I Eli to me has always just been a guy that, especially in the area we're in, people are like, "Oh, Eli's amazing." I'm like, not really, not too much. Eli's thrown for 30 touchdowns, I think, twice in his career. And be it most quarterbacks probably won't throw for 30 touchdowns, but he also had several seasons where his picks were almost the exact same as his touchdowns. Like that's not great.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, as a Giants fan, I would have very weekly anger management sessions because of Eli Manning. He really, his favorite wide receiver was the ground. A little fun fact right there. I
Or
remember
linebacker.
or the line. It was just like I'd be watching the Giants and I see this man Eli Manning rolling out of the pocket. He's like looking for the receiver and then he just throws it at the ground and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why are you throwing it at? I get you don't want to get sacked, and yeah, that's smart, but at least maybe try something or throw it out of bounds. You just look like an idiot just throwing it at the ground. You know?
Yeah, I gotta bring it back. Like something that you guys were talking about how in our area, especially Dorian was talking about this, how in our area a lot of people hype up Eli Manning. Another thing that happens in our area, I don't know if this is actually countrywide or if this is just in the tri-state area where we are, but people absolutely dismantle Tony Romo for no reason. I think Tony Romo he makes my underrated list here. He absolutely does make my underrated list because he had multiple seasons where he threw in the mid-30s for touchdowns. He was one of the best interception avoiders, despite his reputation of actually he has a reputation of throwing picks for some reason, even though he's one of the best at avoiding them, in my opinion. And he actually put up a lot of yards per season. He was another guy who was pretty reliable. He got injured a couple times, but another guy who was generally pretty reliable. And yeah, he was a good decision maker at quarterback, solid game manager when there were pieces around him. I don't think he's a great quarterback all time wise, but I do think that he gets really hated on for no reason.
Well, I mean, his reputation for throwing picks comes from throwing picks at the worst possible time.
That's
I
fair.
mean, we all know the Seattle game where he fumbled, which
Yeah.
I'm not going to comment too much on that. But I mean, if you think back to the Denver Broncos game back in 2013, him and Peyton Manning were dueling it out. Tony Romo, I think, had over 500 yards passing, and then they're driving to win the game at the end of the game, and he throws a pick, and my heart sank, and I was like, Tony, why? And I mean, he just has that type of reputation. He's definitely on my underrated list too because just being a Cowboys fan, I had to deal with a lot trying to defend him when there were certain times I couldn't. But also, he wasn't a terrible quarterback. Nate pulled up the stats, but also people forget Tony Romo was low key a magician. Like the plays he would pull off. I don't know if you guys remember the J.J. Watt play.
Yep.
He broke out of a sack from J.J. Watt and threw a touchdown to Terrence Williams down the field. That was amazing.
Good old Terrence Williams, man. Good old Terrence Williams.
I don't want to talk about it.
Man, as a Giants fan, I have the utmost respect for Tony Romo. I've never been a Tony Romo hater myself. He's a great quarterback. I agree with you guys completely. He's very underrated. It's really just because he never had the accolades, and obviously, you guys mentioned, throwing picks in the worst possible time really hurt his legacy. But in terms of statistics and talent wise, he is 100%. If we were to rank if we were to do top 15 quarterbacks of all time or top 20, he's definitely on my list, no doubt about that. He was extreme. He was good. Basically all I'm trying to say is I agree with you guys. But going back to overrated guys, I have another quarterback from the Cowboys on my overrated list. I have Troy Aikman on my overrated list. I don't think Troy Aikman was all that good, honestly. I'm not even gonna pull up stats. I just don't think he was really all of that. I feel like Tony Romo was better than him, talent wise and statistic wise. Troy Aikman just has the accolades,
Yeah, I actually I'm gonna jump on and agree with you there. Troy Aikman had a lot of weapons. I can see Dorian shaking his head right now, but I gotta say, Troy Aikman, he had a lot of weapons on those offenses that he played on. lots of weapons. He did not have great ratios at all in terms of touchdowns and interceptions. First season, 9-18. Second season, 11-18. Third season, 11-10. Fourth season, 23-14. Then he had a pretty solid season. Then 13-12. Then like 16-7, which is pretty good. And then 12-13. Like his touchdown and interception ratio was atrocious. His last year that he played in, he had 1,632 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 14 picks. I mean, like, the guy just honestly wasn't great. In terms of quarterbacks, didn't have the longest career either. He was not super reliable. He had a lot of seasons where he didn't play the full season. And I think that he's gotten a lot of, I guess you could say he's gotten a lot of respect, a lot of clout because of his standing as kind of like a public figure after his playing career and even during his playing career. And because of how well he played on the biggest stages. But I still think that as an overall quarterback, he's definitely a little bit overrated.
I mean, I'm not gonna deny that there's a little bias in my answer, but I mean, Troy, you don't win 3 Super Bowls by accident. You know what I mean? Like that's impressive. Yes, he had the weapons
So
around
you
him.
could wait, Dorian. I have to just say something real quick. So you can win 2 by accident, but you can't win 3 by accident, correct? Because you said that Eli Manning got really lucky.
True.
So
True.
in your
Ah,
opinion, you can win 2 Super Bowls by accident, but 3, no, that's a no go.
Yeah, nah. You can only win even numbers by accident. You can't win odd numbers by accident.
Oh, so Tom Brady won 6 by accident.
Yeah,
You're
he,
right.
I
he
mean,
doesn't deserve any of them.
see, now I have a whole nother argument for Tom Brady, but that's another topic for another day. But no. But going to Eli Manning, he had 2 of the luckiest catches, but he had to make those impressive plays. He's just overrated. But on Troy Aikman, yes, he had the team around him, but the era he played in also didn't ask for quarterback to throw the ball that much. I mean, you look at guys that
No, that's fair.
we look at guys that we consider to be some of the greatest of all time, like John Elway. John Elway didn't start winning Super Bowls until they got Terrell Davis in the backfield. Now, yes, he had other weapons around him, like Shannon Sharp. We look at Rod Smith and Ed McCaffrey, but that was just the era that called for it. You look at when we think about the era Troy Aikman played in, that's the era we think of most of the running backs coming from. We think Barry Sanders, Eric Dickerson, Emmitt Smith. So that's just the type of era that he played in. I don't think you can fault him too much for that. Now, obviously, the touchdown interception ratio isn't impressive at all. Like I'm not gonna lie to you, but it's just what was called for in the era.
You know what? What you like? Yes, you said like back then in the era, like quarterbacks didn't throw a lot. That even like that boosts our point even more because we're saying like people shouldn't be ranking Troy Aikman in their top like 10, 15 lists because in that era, quarterbacks weren't like premier like players like what you're trying to say. They wouldn't throw a lot. They didn't have the stats. And if we're going based off like stats and saying like not in terms of accolades that like they're overrated, then I just have to put Troy Aikman in that list because like same thing for Eli Manning. Like you could say the same. He didn't have really a bunch of weapons when he won those Super Bowls. He had some weapons, but not a ton. Troy Aikman had like all the weapons to support himself. Like you could say the same for Jimmy Garoppolo as well, who's the biggest name I have on my overrated list, and I know you all agree. Jimmy Garoppolo on a huge billboard of saying overrated, but you could like he has the weapons around him. He doesn't have those stats. He's basically a modernized Troy Aikman. Like he's extremely overrated. He has the weapons. They have a great like coaching staff. I don't know if that Cowboys team had a great defense when Aikman won the Super Bowls. They did. So it's literally like that's like a perfect comparison then. Like it's literally Troy Aikman and Jimmy Garoppolo are like it's like Troy Aikman is the one. Like say you go to a party, right? You got the old like people dancing it up to like the old throwback song, and but it's not good dancing like at all. And you got Jimmy Garoppolo doing like the whoa like 100 times to like watch me whip, watch me nay nay. Like it's just not good, and it's just overrated and out and like not good at all. That's basically like what it is, It's basically like Jimmy Garoppolo and Troy Aikman are basically like brothers, pretty much, just in different eras.
All right, well, I gotta say one thing. Actually, a couple things, but I like your comparison between Jimmy Garoppolo and Troy Aikman. I think that it does make a lot of sense. They're 2 guys who they have a lot of charisma. That's something that's kind of like an underappreciated aspect to that comparison too. is they're both really, really good with the media. They're really good with the press. They're really good with the fans. People like them, like it's even though we talk a lot of trash about Jimmy Garoppolo on the show, he's a really from all accounts, he's a very
Hmm.
likable guy, really good locker room presence to have. Same thing with Troy Aikman, he does media stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if Jimmy Garoppolo did the same thing when he retires. Um, but I would say that Jimmy Garoppolo is only in his his
Well,
second,
yeah,
third
that's
season
fair.
ever
That's
starting
fair.
any games. So it's kind of ridiculous to call him overrated at this point. Like
Yeah,
to put him in that same
Well,
category as a guy who's already played out his whole career. Like the guy's only in his mid-20s,
I
and he only
think
played a couple seasons.
I think Garoppolo's late 20s because he was the backup for a little bit too. I'm
Yeah,
not.
him.
Nate, I see you're doing a fact check.
Yeah, I'll
Dorian, what do
fact
you
check.
have to say about all this, man?
I'm with you on Jimmy Garoppolo, man. I really can't argue. He was one of the really big names on my list, being that I mean you look at the contract he got, and he had only started 4 games or 3 games and got hurt in the third one, so he couldn't even play the fourth. And I mean, yeah, okay, he had like 2 Super Bowl rings. He didn't play in either
Mhm.
of those Super Bowls. Like I don't understand what the hype was about him. Like I remember getting into fantasy football in his first season. I was playing with someone and they drafted Jimmy Garoppolo with like their third or fourth overall pick over guys like Russell Wilson. And I was like, "What are you doing?" He was like, "Jimmy Garoppolo, he's gonna do work." And I was like, "No, he's not." Like rookie head coach. Like coach had just lost the Super Bowl or whatever. I think like the year or two before. Like it was bad.
Ryan, I think we're losing you a little bit. Dorian, can you hear
Yeah,
Ryan?
like, how old?
Yeah, I'm losing him.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, I'm gonna move on to someone who I've got on my list. Actually, a guy who plays linebacker, and I think that he's not so much underrated, but people forget about him a lot. People just look right over him on the list, and if you bring him up, then people are like, "Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. He should be on the list." But they forget about him a lot because he was a little bit of an understated player. He didn't play for so long. But Patrick Willis was one of the most dominating forces ever to play the game at any position. If
Oh
you
yeah.
watch the guy play, he could dictate the course of a game from middle linebacker like no one else could at the time. He was honestly better than Luke Kuechly before Luke Kuechly. Like Luke Kuechly probably modeled a lot of his game off what Patrick Willis was doing. Uh, Absolute monster. It's a shame that his career did end a little bit early, but I still think that he makes the underrated list for me.
Patrick Willis is a name. I definitely forgot to put him on my list. He was
Yeah.
I remember that Super Bowl. He was insane. And throughout the entire playoff run. Patrick Willis is definitely a name not a lot of people remember.
Yeah.
It's really crazy. Like when you think about that 49ers team, you may think Colin Kaepernick, Torrey Smith, guys like that, but that defense was definitely an underrated part of that team.
Yeah. Don't forget about another guy that's actually on my underrated list, Anquan Boldin.
Anquan
Anquan
Boldin.
Boldin is one of the best receivers ever. He makes my top 20 list, Anquan Boldin. And people don't expect it, but he put up yards pretty much every season. He had a ton of catches every season. He was one of the most reliable receivers in terms of not dropping the ball. But he just wasn't really showy like a lot of the other receivers are. He wasn't really a huge presence outside of the football field, so he doesn't really get quite as much respect as some of those other guys do.
Yo, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
hear you
can
now.
All
hear you.
right, good. All right, I'm not on the best computer right now, so I lost you guys for a little bit. But I noticed you guys went to underrated, so I'm gonna say a guy that I have. I think you guys will agree with is Marques Colston is a guy on my underrated list. I think he's really not talked about in top 20 wide receivers of all time, or 25. I think he really at least deserves an honorable mention in those at least just notable, he's a notable receiver that people just don't really think about. I really don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
would
mean,
you can go ahead. You go ahead.
when I think about it, for specifically when I started watching football, Marquise Colston was he was that older receiver that not that many people think of. I think of guys like Roddy White and dang, who was the receiver in Houston? It was
Audrey Johnson.
Andre Johnson. Yeah, it was like those three guys who were the older receivers in the league. They were kind of older and slower, whereas Julio started getting into the league, started getting on his stride. DeAndre Hopkins was drafted a couple years after. So I definitely think that that's part of the reason why he's not mentioned in like the top 25 because of he played in between T.O. and this new era of receivers, which is insane.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally agreeing with you there. Like that era of receivers definitely doesn't get quite as much respect as they deserve. Another guy that I'd put on there would be like Reggie Wayne was around that era
Mhm.
too. But you talked about Roddy White a little bit. Roddy White still has more career receptions than Julio Jones, and obviously Julio Jones is gonna pass him. But like considering the amount of like the body of work that Julio Jones has put into this point, it's pretty impressive that Roddy White actually is still ahead of him, like career wise. And to bring it back to like the kind of guys that you were talking about, like Marques Colston, uh, they're just like I said before, wide receiver is a position that's really dominated by guys who are more outspoken,
Yeah,
more flashy, more showy, guys who like to mess around with the media a lot. Like you think of a guy like T.O. definitely comes to mind. You know, a guy like Odell Beckham comes to mind instantly.
Des
Uh,
Bryant.
Des Bryant, yeah, those guys. Michael Thomas recently. I mean, like those guys. I mean, he's getting its Twitter beef all over the place. But
Yeah.
like those kind of guys, those are the guys that generally dominate that position, and they get a lot more of the headlines. And there's not as much like airspace for those less like for those more understated guys. Uh, obviously he gets a lot of respect, but Calvin Johnson was like that. Right now, DeAndre Hopkins is a guy like that gets a lot of respect. But in that era that you're talking about, those guys really weren't they weren't talked about enough.
Yeah, nah, they definitely weren't. And I mean, you brought up the like Odell Beckham and some of these guys getting into beef. On my overrated list, I actually have a guy who went up against Odell Beckham, and I think you're gonna agree.
I got it on my list. I know who you're saying. I know who you're
Josh
about to say.
Norman.
I hate that man so much. He is the most overrated cornerback ever to play the game. He is not good. He is absolutely terrible. He had that one season because the Panthers were like 15-1 because of Cam Newton, not because of Josh frickin' Norman. He was just not good. It looked good because that whole defense was good. So like I just hate Josh Norman. I'm sorry. Continue, Dorian.
Josh Norman's one of those guys who you either love him or you hate him, and I'm pretty sure a good amount of people hate him right now. But I mean, he's one of those guys who speaks his mind. He's not afraid to go up against anybody. You saw that against Odell Beckham. He's definitely one of the greatest trash talkers in the game right now. And I mean, he's just Ryan mentioned it. He had the one good season back in 2015 with the Panthers, and then decided to hold out because he thought he was one of the best or the best corner in the league, which frankly he wasn't. Josh Norman is an extremely physical corner, but I remember against
He's a
the
bum.
Cowboys this
He's
year.
a bum.
I remember against the Cowboys this year, he got toasted by Devin Smith, a guy who was kind of a journeyman receiver. And all season he was kind of getting toasted. It got to the point where the Redskins just benched him. Like he
He's a
just
bum.
he wasn't good. He
He's a
Yeah,
and
bum. He's
yeah,
a bum.
Josh Norman. Josh Norman is about scheme fit. I think that he's overrated as well, but that's not because he's a bad player. It's because of the perception around the league and the perception among fans is that Josh Norman, like at the time, was that Josh Norman is one of the best cornerbacks in the league all around, just one of the best, right? And that's what he advertised to people too. So I don't blame them for thinking that. But it was pretty evident all along that he was just a very, very good zone corner. He was really, really good at playing the zone. That's what he did. That's what he did all the time in Carolina. He never played man in Carolina. Never. And when he got traded, he was paid and he was expected to play like a man cover corner, which is not who he was. So obviously, in order to be a top, like an upper echelon player at corner, you do have to be able to shadow guys. You have to be able to play man to man. You have to be able to press a little bit better than Josh Norman could. So I agree with you guys. I would say that he's definitely a little bit overrated.
He's a
But
bum.
yeah, but you talked about reasons, Ryan, why the Carolina team was good and why they were 15-1. You mentioned Cam Newton. I totally agree with that. But you also mentioned that defense. The key contributor on that defense that gets way overlooked all the time is Thomas Davis. Thomas Davis
Mm-hmm.
is definitely on my underrated list
Mm-hmm.
because he
He's on
just
mine.
all he did was just produce every single year, game in, game out, every single game. He was one of the most reliable linebackers there was. Great in coverage, pretty solid against the run too, like really good against the run. And he didn't age very quickly at all. Like he had some pretty good seasons late in his career too. So definitely Thomas Davis is someone who makes my underrated list.
Yeah, Thomas Davis is definitely an underrated linebacker. He had a couple injury concerns like towards the beginning of his career, but then he just took off in Carolina, and he's definitely been one of the better linebackers within the last 5-6 years. When I really think about it, in terms of linebackers that I watch.
You remember that it was this like gruesome injury that he had. I think the year they were playing in the Super Bowl when like I saw pictures of like his arm or something. It was like disgusting, and he
Yeah.
still played. Like it's just like he not like eye popping stats I know for Tom Davis, but production wise, like and the injuries that he's fought through is like that really warrants him to be on all of our underrated lists. We all pretty much have a general agreement here that he deserves to be on the underrated list.
Ryan, are your eyes okay?
Yeah, why?
Because you keep on saying they're popping.
Oh my God, it's just enough. But another guy I have on my, or two other guys I have on my underrated list is one is Cam Hayward, the defensive end on the Steelers. He is not talked about really, or really thought about outside of Steelers fans as like a top 5 defensive end in the league. And the stats that he has, like I know aren't eye popping, but his production level again, it's incredible. He should be on people's like top 5 defensive ends. He's gonna get paid when he's a free agent. That man, don't be surprised if that man gets like Aaron Donald money. Like he is going to get paid. I don't know if it's going to be the Steelers, but he will get that contract. And I don't know if he necessarily deserves that large amount of money, but he is a top 5, if not top 7 defensive end in the league.
I think he's slightly underrated, but I don't think it's that much. I think that he's pretty accurately rated, to be honest. You look at the top 100 list from the last few years. I'm pretty sure he made the top 100 list 4 years in a row, and I'm pretty sure that's based on like other players' perception of him. I don't know if fan vote plays into that at all, but he's made the Pro Bowl too. I think that he's. I think a lot of people say he's underrated, but enough people say that he's underrated for him to actually be pretty accurately rated because everyone thinks that he's just underrated.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you that he's one of the better pass rushers in the league. But I mean, you look at his numbers since 2015, 7 sacks, 3 sacks, 12 sacks, 8 sacks, 9 sacks. Tackles, he had 83 combined in 2019, 51 in 2018. So I mean, he's it's not that I'm saying like he's bad, but he's just kind of one of those pass rushers that goes ahead, gets his numbers, and just just calls it a day.
I mean, yeah, like you got to make fair points. Like if we're gonna say a guy's underrated enough, he's gonna start to become like not underrated. So that's definitely fair right there. But another guy I had on my underrated list is Michael Bennett. I think Michael Bennett is a very underrated and overlooked defensive end. When you think of that Legion of Boom defense, I feel like Michael Bennett is like one of the last names that really comes to our minds when thinking of the Legion of Boom. I don't know if you guys would agree.
I'm gonna disagree on that one.
Okay.
Like pretty strongly. I think that Michael Bennett. I mean, he definitely produced, but he produced on defenses that were already elite outside of him. Like he got added to an Eagles defense that was already above average to elite, and he made them better, obviously. But like he wasn't anything that was like a standalone kind of force. On that Seattle defense, I mean, they had everyone you could possibly imagine else on the defense. Like for pass rushing, they already had Bruce Irvin on that defense. They already had like Cliff Averill. Those guys were producing big time. And they were also being aided a lot by the spectacular coverage just across the board from Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman, Byron Maxwell even was playing really well that season. Bobby Wagner, best middle linebacker in the league. KJ Wright, who's one of the best cover linebackers in the entire league too. I get that. I get what you're saying about him being one of the last guys that you think of on that defense. But I think that in terms of rankings, I would rank him actually towards the bottom of that defense because they just had so many other star contributors there. And also, I think we have to take into account a little bit of his locker room impact. There's been reports from around the league constantly that like he's not necessarily the best to have in the locker room. I obviously I have no experience with that. I can't confirm that. I can't deny that, but that's just what I've heard. And yeah, I would have to say that based on that and combined with the fact that he played with already elite defenses, I would not say that he's really an underrated kind of guy.
Nate can neither confirm nor deny. Just putting that out there.
Cannot confirm nor deny.
Indeed.
I mean, I'm kind of torn between this one because I kind of agree with both of you guys. You know, he is one of the last names that you think of, but that's for good reason. You think of guys Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman, Byron Maxwell. You think of all those guys, then you got Bobby Wagner, Cliff Averill, and then you get down to him. So, I mean, he is one of the last names, but it's for good reason. But watching him on the Cowboys this year, he was definitely he was a good player. He definitely came and added. I mean, we had troubles with the pass rush at certain times this season, and a lot of times he was the guy who came in and got the sack. So I mean, I'm kind of torn with this one. I think he's kind of in between, and that I mean he's not the greatest, but he's also not the worst in terms of being overrated or underrated.
You know, I mean, that's fair. I mostly had him as an underrated player just because I feel like he was a great like defensive end. I just feel like people don't really like think of him that much. And like you guys said, when you think of the Legion of Boom, that pretty much proves my point. He's underrated because when we think of the Legion of Boom, we don't think of him being a part of the Legion of Boom when pretty much everyone on that defense played their equal role in the Legion of Boom. You know what I'm saying? Like Michael Bennett was a key pass rusher for that team. So was Bruce Irvin. And then they also had that extremely talented secondary, extremely talented linebacker core. It's just like he's just not a guy that a lot of us think about coming to the Legion of Boom is all I'm really trying to say, you know? And that's why I really think he is a underrated defensive end that, you know, he had a great career, in my opinion, as well. So I just feel like people don't really think about him a ton.
Yeah, I mean, I think his reputation was hurt also because he's so outspoken on a lot of issues that I think that's why people kind of shoved him to the bottom of that list.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's definitely a part of it. I think it's a lot of public perception kind of thing because, like you said, he was very out there on a lot of issues. But yeah, that's definitely some of it. He made himself very public. And there's definitely I totally agree with you, Ryan. There's a case to be made that he's underrated. I personally disagree, but I understand what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from. You know.
Yeah, I get you. Do you guys have anyone else that you wanna mention as over or underrated?
Yeah, I just had someone and I totally forgot who it was. So Dorian, if you could get in over here, and then I'll try to think of who I had on my list.
A guy that I would say is somewhat underrated would be Tiki Barber. I know, Ryan, do you want to say anything about that one?
Man, people really forget about Tiki Barber, man. It's crazy. He was a beast. He was a beast.
Oh yeah. He was a guy that I'm sure all three of us grew up watching, you know, even though I hate the Giants with all my heart and soul, you know. Tiki Barber was always a guy that I enjoyed watching. He was definitely a great running back. He was a freaking monster.
People forget about him. I don't know why.
He holds 22 of the Giants rushing records. Like that.
Wow.
Again, you can't do that by accident. Like that. Yeah. You have to be pretty damn good to be able to hold all those records.
Well, I mean, Peyton Hillis did it by accident. I'm sure he's got some like weird rushing records for the Browns or something.
Potentially.
I don't know.
Maybe.
He definitely did it by accident, though. Just saying.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Cleveland hyped him up. They had hope for a little bit.
Nah, that's like every year.
Yeah, you can't give Cleveland fans hope. You know, that's
you really can't. So I feel so bad for him. Nate, did you find that guy that you were trying to find?
No, I didn't. I'm just gonna kind of let it slip. You know, I've accepted the reality that someone went into my head. That was a really good idea. Someone who is pretty underrated. And I lost it. So if I
is the underrated player Carlos the Owl Plant?
Yes, of course. You know.
Let me see it.
Guest appearance. Carlos guest appearance.
Hey, all love for my man Carlos the Owl Plant. But I'm gonna wrap this one up for today. I had a fun time talking with you guys about the over and underrated players. Definitely a lot of similar thoughts on this episode, but a lot of different ones as well. Nate, you got anything else you want to say before we wrap this one up?
Not much. I hope that everyone has a good day. I hope that everyone tries to improve their memory. That's definitely something that I have to do. Do some like brain games or something, so that I don't forget the player that I was gonna say in the middle of the episode. But yeah, this is why you gotta stay in school, guys. This is why you gotta keep on grinding, keep on improving yourself, and yeah, that's all I got to say.
Yeah, man, definitely. Dorian, you want to say anything else before we sign off?
Just same thing. I hope you guys have a great day. Hope you guys enjoyed listening to this one. This was definitely a fun episode. And Eli Manning is overrated and Tony Romo's underrated. That's it.
Oh my gosh! All right, that's enough there of the bias. Everyone, basically what we're saying is stay in school, and Eli Manning better than Tony Romo. But that's it for today, everyone. I hope everyone enjoyed listening. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at QF_Nate and Ryan, and on Twitter at QF_NNR. And we have a YouTube channel now. Nate, if you could educate the listeners on that username, because I do not know it off the top of my head.
Well, this is going to be posted on YouTube, so I don't think we really need to do that. But links down in the description. You already know. Definitely drop a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel. Subscribers really help. Likes really help too, I think. I'm not too familiar with the YouTube algorithm. I don't know how many people are familiar with the YouTube algorithm. But anyway, if you could help out if you enjoyed the video, definitely go do that.
Yeah, definitely, man. 100% right there. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. And also make sure you subscribe on Apple, follow us on Spotify, and listen to our show. All support is very, very appreciated by all three of us. We love all you guys, everyone who listens. And that'll be it for today. So I hope everyone enjoyed listening, and we'll see you guys next time.